Today I'm going to be showing you some different colored pencil techniques. And the hope is always that, wherever we're at, we're always learning to get better and trying new things and upping our game. So hopefully there's at least one or two things from this that you can use that can help you be better when using colored pencil, and also maybe make you aware of some tricks that you didn't know before. So some of the things we're going to be working on are fading, blending, thinking about color temperature, um, blending with a colorless blender or a white pencil, layering colors, and then emphasizing with Sharpie. So the first thing to think about is the amount of pressure that you're applying for the colored pencil. So, you can think about, whether you're wanting a lighter look or you want a look that requires a little bit more pressure, or maybe you want a fade. So if that's something that you're trying to work on, I'm going to use my blue colored pencil here. Just like if you're shading with a regular pencil, when you block out the color, go in a really light ellipse motion. So when I say ellipse, I mean kind of like this. So kind of circular, kind of like a flat circle instead of straight lines. And try to use the side of your colored pencil. This is going to let you blend more easily. And then as you go, you're applying a little bit more pressure, but you're trying to weave that into what you already have. So you don't want to have a really hard line. You want it to blend in. And this takes a little bit of practice. Really, is that as I'm going, I'm pressing a little bit harder and applying more pressure. Then I can kind of work back and forth over my edge. And then if I press all the way, I should have a hardness of about what you see right there. So it kind of depends on what you're going for, but it's important to know that you have the freedom to, play around with that. You don't have to just do all one, value, if you will. You can, go lighter or darker, or even include a fade. And a lot of times a fade can add some interest to what you're doing. So anyway, I would spend a little more time blending that out, but that's the idea. You might have a situation where you want a blend somewhere in your project. So a blend means going from one color to another. So I'm going to use these two. So the more similar the colors, the more easily they're going to blend. If I had two colors like this, that would be a lot more challenging. So I'm going to go with two that are very similar. They're right next to each other on the color wheel. So same thing, I'm going to go really light and use my ellipse shapes. And work my yellow over. And then I'm going to weave my darker, kind of more golden yellow into that. So I don't want a hard edge. I want the two colors to blend into one another. And I want to go back and forth over where they meet. And then maybe even taking this lighter yellow and going back over. Again, would spend a little more time, but I want to keep moving. So temperature gives you a sense of, warming up a color or cooling down a color. So just because something is red or violet or blue doesn't mean that there aren't different versions of that. So I can create a cooler version or a warmer version. So for red, and I'm not actually going to blend this because we already talked about blending, but if I have the color red, then on one side, my warmer version of that would be orange. And my cooler version of that would be violet. So I'm going to blend. So I'm going to color the whole rectangle red and then blend violet and orange to give a cooler and a warmer tint. And then if I go to blue, to get a little bit cooler would be adding violet, and to be getting a little bit warmer would be adding green. And if I'm working with green, if I get a little bit cooler, I'm adding blue. And if I get a little bit warmer, I'm adding yellow. Or a lighter green would work too. And for violet, If I'm getting a little bit warmer, I'm adding red. And if I'm getting a little bit cooler, I'm adding blue. And then for yellow, if I'm getting a little bit cooler, ideally I'd use like a lime green. I think I brought one. Oh, here it is. Okay. So like a lime green would be perfect, really lightly to cool that down. Oops. And then to cool that down, or I'm sorry, warm it down, I could use a slightly warmer light yellow or an orange really lightly. Now right here, I want you guys to try, instead of just fading from cooler to warm, I want you to try blending just like you would if it were a value sphere. So you're going to have your base color. So in this case, I'm going to do blue. So again, like you shaded when we practiced value shading, you're going to go with the grain of the shape. So it's an ellipse. So instead of going straight across or straight this way, I'm going to curve with the shape. Notice I'm going really light. I'm making ellipse shapes. I'm going a little bit with the side of my colored pencil. And then I'm going to put my shadow over here. So I'm going to use the cooler color for the shadow, because generally shadows are going to be a little bit cooler. There we go. I've got my core shadow there. And then I'm going to go over that with a little bit of blue just to work the two together. And then I'm going to add my highlight over here, and I'm going to do that with this lime green. Oh, nope, I'm not. Just kidding. It's broken. I would do my lime green. I'm going to do my other green since I don't have the lime green. And just really gently work a little bit of highlight here, and then I'm going to fade that into the blue. Again, would take a little more time, but we're going to move on so that I can show you the last few things. So one thing that is really, really helpful, and we have these in the classroom, so if you're not here and you're working with us remotely, you could think about, especially if you use colored pencils a lot, getting one of these. They're fabulous. It's a Prismacolor colorless blender. You can order on Amazon. Or if you don't have that, you can use a white colored pencil. And I do think that the colorless blender works a little bit better, but this can help you blend too. So with colored pencil, we don't have a blending tool. So basically the white or the colorless blender works as our blending tool. So instead of just weaving two colors together, we can weave the two colors together and then use either the white or the colorless blender. And it works as our shading tool and helps move the color together. Again, works better if the two colors are fairly similar. If they're opposites, it's going to be a little bit harder. I'm going to make sure I don't have anything else on here. So I'm going to work any other color off of it. It looks like it's clean. So then I'm going to use that just like I would if I were shading. I'm going to use, an ellipse motion and blend the colors together. It's very satisfying. I'm not going to lie. Okay, and then layering colors to create new colors. So sometimes we don't have the exact color that we need. For example, I do not have a blue-green, and maybe I want one. So I'm going to use my green. And then I'm going to just lightly go over it with my blue. And the hope is that the colors start to mix together so that it just makes one color. Oh yeah, there we go. And you can use, the white to blend them together, or you can just work them back and forth over each other, or the colorless blender. So that was this color and this color. And then lastly, Sometimes it's kind of nice to use a Sharpie or a gel pen to add a little bit more emphasis. So I gave you guys an area to just kind of play around with that. That might be something that you want to use for your project. So just create a shape here that I might want to emphasize. And I'm going to use some of my colored pencil skills. Use that orange and work that in. Then again, maybe I want a little more emphasis. So bold Sharpie is fabulous for that. So I'm going to add a little bit of texture line in here with a black Sharpie. And then I can either do a fine Sharpie or a regular Sharpie. Maybe even I even want to add an exaggerated thick shadow over here. That could be cool. And then white gel pens are really fabulous too. So sometimes students like to use those to add a little bit more detail. So, you know, up to you if you want to embellish a little bit. So I'm going to leave a photograph of this for you guys to reference so that you can see it. But hopefully that's helpful and you can really up your colored pencil game for our project.